Thank you so much for streaming our latest message from First Baptist Church. Here at FBC, our mission is to lead people into a growing relationship with Jesus Christ. We do that by thinking big, thinking small, thinking in, and thinking out. We hope that this message helps you as you continue to grow in your faith. If you would like to stay connected to FBC, you can visit our website at fbcloyd.ca, look us up on Facebook and Instagram, or download our free mobile app. Now here's the latest from FBC. Enjoy.
Hey, good morning, everyone. Happy Mother's Day. Happy Mom's Day to all you moms, especially. You know, I would be really hard pressed to think of a role more significant than a mom, and we just want to acknowledge that today and wish you all well because of the impact, the role that you play in our lives, the significance that you have on all of us. I know I wouldn't be where I'm at without my mom, and I think sometimes maybe the only person that's possibly more surprised at where I am is my mom than I am. But regardless of that, I wouldn't be here without her. And so I trust that you share that same sort of a relationship with your mom. And on behalf of all of us at the church here, to all of you moms, happy Mother's Day. Trust that you have a really good day with those that you love. Hey, we are in the midst of a series by Kyle Idleman called The Song. And we started it a few weeks ago, and then we took a break last week, and we did the pitch-in day out at Bud Miller. So thank you all for taking part in that. That was awesome. I'm so excited that it wasn't today that we were out there. It was a little windy last week, but it was far better than it would have been today. So thanks for coming out and for doing such a great job and participating in that. And just trust again that we can show Lloydminster that we love Lloyd and that we're here to value them as a community and make this place a better place for having us. So thanks for helping us to accomplish that. So anyways, we're in the middle of this message, and I just wanted to say one more thing too. When if you were here 2 weeks ago and I asked a question about, if there was anything else that you would like to talk about, when I ask questions of you as the congregation, they're largely rhetorical. No, just kidding. It was awesome. I had some help with that question, and thankfully we were on the same page, so we were able to accomplish that. You will have a chance to ask other questions, though, like Ryan said, so don't miss out on that. Dive in and give us those questions so that we can try and get the right answers for those as well. So we're going to continue, and today I'm going to do something it's largely unprecedented, I think. I'm going to try and do 2 sermons in one. And you should laugh at that, because there isn't a pastor out there that doesn't try and pack more than one sermon into every message, near as I can tell. But we're going to try and do 2 things, because we didn't want to miss out on either of these messages. The first one is on handling conflict in our marriage. The second one is on restoring romance. And so those just blend naturally together, and so we're going to try and do that this morning. So when it comes to conflict, when it comes to marriage, Song of Solomon isn't silent on the whole area of passion and romance. It goes there, like we found out. And it's interesting to me as well that Song of Solomon isn't silent on this whole area of conflict either. It's very real. It talks to us about things that are tangible, that are relevant to us today. And it doesn't hold any punches. So we're going to dive in there and start with that. But before we do, let's just pray and ask God to be with us as we tackle this, and then as we move into the second half as well. So pray with me. Father, this morning again we stop and we acknowledge you as God. We thank you, God, that you are the God that you are benevolent, that you love us, that you have lent yourself to life with us, that you have made yourself available to us in the form of your Son, Jesus Christ, and his Spirit, and your Spirit. And Lord, this morning I would ask that as we come into this message, as we celebrate communion later, that you would speak to us, that you would help us to understand you better, that you would make us more like yourself, and that by your Spirit, that you would reveal yourself to us so that we could become like you. And so as we look at this area of conflict, as we look at the area of rebuilding romance, Lord, again, come and do a work in our lives. And we ask this now in your precious name. Amen. All right. So as we come to chapter 5 in the Song of Solomon, particularly verses 2 to 8, we find there conflict. So Solomon and his bride have somehow, very shortly after the honeymoon, run into some sort of an issue, and it's caused a bit of a rift. And we're not sure what that was. He comes, he's knocking at the door. She's a little bit slow in responding, doesn't open it right away, just a little bit late. And by the time she does open it, he's gone, which then causes her some distress. And she's clearly upset about this. And so the first thing that we need to understand from this is that conflict is going to be a reality for us in our relationships. That's just the facts. This side of heaven, given our sinful nature, conflict is going to be a part of the relationships that we have in our lives, our marriages and our friendships as well. And so what that means then is that we need to learn how to leverage conflict going forward so that we can use it and it can be beneficial to us. And we can leverage it in the right direction so that it builds us rather than tears us down. So the fact is, conflict in our marriages is going to be a reality. It doesn't mean that your marriage is failing. It doesn't mean that it's going to fall apart. It just means that we have to navigate it well. Now the thing is that we can look at conflict and say, oh, well, it's just a fact. We're going to encounter it any which way we slice it. So therefore, I'll just shrug it off and it just is what it is. That's the wrong approach as well, because if we don't handle conflict well, it can tear our relationships apart. So we have to this morning, we have to be cognizant of it and learn to navigate it in a healthy way. And so what we're going to do this morning is we're going to try and look at really quickly, we're going to rocket through these things really quickly, 3 things that can help us to leverage conflict in our marriages, in our relationships, so that we can be better off coming out of them than otherwise being torn apart. So the first thing that we want to look at this morning is, best thing to help us navigate conflict well is to, first of all, be committed to the relationship. Now, I've said it before, you're not going to get rocket science from me. And this seems obvious, right? It would seem to be common sense. Well, I'm married, therefore I'm obviously committed to this relationship. But the fact is that we have to lean in and exercise this commitment to the relationship as we go through it. Having a conflict in our marriage is okay so long as, provided that, we are committed to the good of the marriage, first and foremost, not the good of ourselves. When we start to leverage conflict in a way where it's all about ourselves and it becomes a personal issue, that's where we start to get off into the wrong areas that can cause major problems for ourselves. When your spouse recognizes that you are more committed and concerned about your relationship together than you are about yourself, when your friends understand that you're more interested and committed to your relationship, your friendship, than you are about yourself, it changes the dynamics of conflict. First of all, it's going to change the tone of their conflicts. It's not going to be personal, which loses the edge. It's about the commitment to the relationship itself. And so that affects the way that we engage in the conflict in and of itself. Secondly, it's going to help your conflict come to a better end, because the resolution is going to be beneficial for you both, not just one of you. So changes that on a number of different levels. Conflict then can actually help a marriage thrive, so long as it's more about the marriage than it is about either spouse. All right? If you can agree as a couple as friends to engage in that relationship on this basis, then it changes the way that you navigate going forward. And what's more, I think it also reduces the amount of conflict that you're going to encounter, just right off the hop. If it's about you, it's not worth fighting for. If this is something that is just your issue that's going to establish you as the winner, then it's not worth going after. Just give it up right off the hop. If it is something that will actually benefit you as a couple, you as a friend in your friendships, well, then it's worth having the conversation. Get into that and navigate that. But boy, I'll tell you what, when you look at that and you evaluate it honestly, and you'll see more often than not that it is about us. It's about me winning. It's about my preferences and getting what I want. And if we can leave that alone, it's going to limit and eliminate a lot of the conflicts that arise in our relationships. This morning, what would change in the way that you handle conflict with your spouse or with your friends if you truly cared more about the health and thriving of your marriage than about being right or getting your way? What would change? And this morning, don't point fingers in your head. This isn't about, well, what they should do this, they should do that. It's not about that. It's about what would you do? What would you do differently if you were truly about the health of your relationship and the good of your spouse? How would that change the way that you proceed? Now, really quickly, I just want to point out that abuse in any form in your marriage is something that you should not overlook. This is not something for you to just not bring up for the health of your marriage. Abuse is never going to result in a thriving marriage. And so that needs to be brought up for the good of your marriage. And it needs to be dealt with appropriately. So I'm not saying go home and just suck it up and let it be, hoping that that will help your marriage. Don't hear that at all this morning. If you're in an abusive relationship, then that needs to be addressed, and it needs to be addressed appropriately and properly. So bring it up, and we can help you get the help that you need in that. All right, so be committed to the relationship. Number 2, quickly, apologize first. It's the second thing that we need to do. Don't just apologize. Be the first to apologize. We should view this as a race to apologize when we get into a conflict. Sometimes it's going to be little things. Sometimes it's going to be big things. And it's going to be hard to be the one that apologizes first. Because that makes us vulnerable, doesn't it? It means that we have to step out and we have to admit that we were wrong. That somehow we had a part to play in this issue. And that we are sorry about that. Genuinely sorry. But it's the most important thing that you can do to help your marriage thrive, is to apologize. So, when we understand that committing to the good of our marriage means that we are so concerned about the relationship with our spouse, and we're so concerned about the good of our spouse, then we understand that we need to humble ourselves and make that apology. That's being committed to the relationship. That's what it looks like, is to make that apology. Be the first one to do it. Don't wait to get caught. Don't be sitting there hoping that it's just going to slide by unnoticed. When you know that you're out of line, bring it up and apologize. Don't try to just win the argument. Apologize. I am sorry for causing this issue. I am sorry for what I've done. Don't bring up the past. Don't be sitting there, well, this is all your fault because if you hadn't have done this, that, and the other thing, we wouldn't be in this position today. Just apologize. I'm sorry, dear. Has nothing to do with what's happened in the past. I screwed up. It's my problem. Don't try and excuse your behavior because of theirs. Well, I'm not doing anything you didn't do. Right? Does that sound vaguely familiar? Don't go there. Apologize. And here too, this is another thing. Don't use the silent treatment. Because man, I'll tell you, we get all holier than thou. Oh, I'm not going to say anything bad. I'm just not going to say anything. And you're going to know exactly what I mean when I don't say anything. I can communicate volumes by just shutting up and making you know, letting you know that it's all because of what you did, that I'm not talking now. Don't do it. Apologize. Admit your part in it. I need to admit my part in the problem and seek their forgiveness. It takes a lot of courage and humility, like I said, to be the one that apologizes first. But I'll tell you something else. It's going to take a bigger toll on you in your marriage, in your relationships, if you struggle along, ongoing with unresolved conflict. Let me say that again. It takes a lot of courage to apologize. But it will take even more of a toll. It will be even harder yet to not address those conflicts, those issues in your marriage. So deal with them right away and apologize. Be the first one to apologize. Number 3, be kind to each other. Again, this would seem to be common sense. Be kind to each other. Well, obviously, I'm going to be kind to my wife and my family and my friends. I'm a nice guy. That's the way I roll. But think about it for a second. Compare how you would address an issue with a friend to how you address an issue with your spouse. Does it look the same? Does it sound the same? Do you use the same tone of voice with a friend that you do with your spouse? What do you say to them in that conflict? Do you use kind words? Do you ever belittle a friend? Cut them down? Make them feel this big? How much sarcasm do you have in your voice, in the tone of that discussion with your spouse as compared to your friend? It's not nearly so easy as it sounds, is it? And oftentimes, we don't do what we need to do. We're not kind to our spouses. I'm convinced that probably the majority of our conflicts start off as relatively petty issues, but they escalate into major wars because of the tone that we use, the words that we use, the way that we address that petty issue. It escalates because I'm not kind. I'm not nice. And we need to be. Paul wrote in Galatians 5:22 and 23, you know it well, about the fruit of the Spirit. The fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, forbearance, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. Use those as a filter in your conflicts. Think about it before you say it. Is what I'm about to say kind? Is the way that I'm going to say this gentle? Am I being patient? Is this going to bring joy? If we use that filter, I think it would reduce dramatically the number of conflicts, and it would absolutely revolutionize the outcome of them. We have to be kind, gentle, and nice to our spouses and our friends. Moving on quickly this morning. Maybe you're here today and you're in a situation where you're suffering the effects of having not fought nicely over the years. Maybe you're here this morning and your relationship is wrecked today because you haven't done conflict well. And there's issues, and they're big ones. Well, the good news is that you can rebuild the romance in your relationship. You can rediscover that love and feeling with God's help. Solomon and his bride were in the habit of always talking about their love. And they were always creating romance together as couples. As a couple. They were building into one another. And that just permeated through their relationship. And we see it over and over as we read about them. But if you're like me, you read for a few minutes and then you think to yourself, oh, those guys are so naive. They're going to find out a whole nother story here real quick. Right? And we kind of laugh at them. Because we don't think that can last. It's just not realistic. But I think deep in our hearts, we want that to be the case in our relationships. We want a relationship where our spouses come along and do nothing but talk about how amazing that we make them feel, and how much that they love us, and how much they want to spend time with us. Don't you dream about that secretly down inside? Don't you yearn for that? That would be my case. That we would be soulmates. You can be. When we exercise the right things. And we're going to look at 3 things that we can exercise to help us do that. The problem is that over time, we learn why this just isn't the case. We discover all those reasons why Solomon and his bride are naive. Maybe you're here this morning and you've fought so much in your relationship that you've forgotten how to laugh together. That you've forgotten how to have fun. And to be able to share a smile with your spouse. Maybe you've worked so hard to provide for your spouse and your family that you've forgotten to nurture that relationship. That the relationship has just been ignored while you've done the necessities, just trying to keep up with the bills. And maybe you're here this morning and you're thinking that she's just stopped trying. All I find nowadays is flannel and face cream. Right? Maybe that's because you've quit pursuing her with your words. Maybe you've quit letting her know how desirable she is to you. And so instead of expressing love and making that our default, building into our spouses and just doting on them, We create new habits. We go in a different direction, like going to bed without talking to one another. And we eat separately, according to my schedule and when it suits me. And we never, ever spend money on flowers. Right? We don't take time to express our love in word or deed. It's been months since we've gone on a date and spent some quality time together. And we've settled into the habit of just watching TV all night long. And the romance dies. The good news is that it doesn't have to stay that way. You're in a rut. It's okay, it happens. But choosing to stay in the rut will only take a toll on you individually and as a couple. So don't do it. It will probably take some time and a whole bunch of effort, and it's not going to be easy or a lot of fun, but you can make some new habits to turn things around. And this morning, if you don't think that your marriage is in a rut, just hang on. It's coming. And if you start now to employ these things, then I would suggest that those ruts will be smaller and a lot further between. So number one, enjoy each other. The first habit that we have to start to rebuild is enjoying one another. In Song of Solomon 1, verse 4, she says, "Take me away with you." She wants to go with him. In 2, verse 3, she says, "He is like a tree that she delights to sit in his shade." She wants to be with him. Spend time together. They like one another and they find ways to be together and to share life together. It's easy this morning to give all the reasons why you don't enjoy each other's company anymore. It's so simple, and we get into that rut. But rather than doing that, why not think back on some of the things that you used to love to do and start doing them again? And if circumstances aren't such that you can do that, well then find some things that you both enjoy doing now and start to do those things together. Create some opportunities to enjoy each other's company. The past is always going to give you reasons why not to do it. But the fact is, the past is the past. And here's the thing. That I think when we use the past as an excuse, well, it doesn't make sense for me to do that anymore. All this stuff has changed. What really has happened is that the past is no longer the actual problem. I've become the problem. It's me. The past is the past. It's done. It's over. But the way that I'm interpreting it, the way that I am looking at it, then I now become the problem because I'm holding the past as the issue. It's me that's the problem. I need to get over it and move forward. Like I say, it's not going to be easy, but it can be done. So here's the second thing to do. Number 2, forgive each other. Get in the habit of forgiving each other. I would venture to say this morning that if you're not in the habit of forgiving your spouse, there's not a lot of hope for your marriage. Might even be doomed. but for sure, it's not going to thrive. We need to be in the habit of forgiving one another. Over time in any marriage, your feelings are going to be hurt. It's going to happen. Painful words are going to be said. Poor decisions are going to be made. I'm here to testify. And if forgiveness isn't the habit that you have in place, then bitterness will take its place. Now listen to that again. If you're not in the habit of leveraging forgiveness in your relationships, where forgiveness should be, bitterness will take its place. And bitterness will tear you apart. Bitterness kills romance. Bitterness destroys passion. Bitterness ruins friendship. No marriage can survive bitterness when it takes the place of forgiveness in your life. This is another way that marriage mirrors the relationship between Christ and us, the church. Without his forgiveness, there would be no relationship. We would be severed from God. Done like dinner, tout fini. We sin, we fall short, we humiliate Christ over and over, despite the fact that he died for us. And yet, over and over, he forgives us. He's in the habit of forgiving. And as we exercise that same habit, as we go to our spouses and recognize that we have failed, that we have made a mistake, screwed up, and ask their forgiveness, and as they do extend forgiveness, as we do extend them forgiveness, then what can happen is what should happen in our lives with Christ as well. That we are overwhelmed by his forgiveness. And we are overjoyed at the fact that he extends himself that way. And we lean further into the relationship out of gratitude to him for what he has done for us. It's the same thing in our relationships, except the offenses happen both ways. We need to forgive one another because we've both messed up. You will be wronged, but you will also be the one who wrongs. You will have your feelings hurt, but you will also be the one who hurts feelings. You will be cut by words, but you will also speak cruel words yourself. And so we need to lean in and exercise forgiveness as a habit in our relationships with one another. If we forgive like Christ forgives, we will have a thriving relationship, a marriage that sings. Thirdly, we need to pursue each other. We've got to fly. Here's another habit that you see throughout the Song of Solomon. When she couldn't find him, she chased him, chapters 3 and 5. When he was with her, he could not stop talking about her beauty, chapter 4. When he was outside the door, he knocked to get back in. Just as a few examples. They pursued each other. Now, pursuing doesn't literally mean chasing, right? We often use the term pursuing when we're talking about dating. You remember that. Guys pursue girls when they're dating, when they go out of their way to talk to her, find that opportunity. You know, swim the river, climb over the mountain and just say, oh, I just happened to be in the neighborhood. Right? He listens to her. She's talking about flowers and he's just, right? For that matter, he buys her flowers. These are for you. never thinks about that again. Plans surprises for her, and tries to be creative in thinking up ideas for dates. He pursues her. She pursues him too, incidentally. She laughs at his jokes. It's kind of like, oh, yeah! She goes out on the cheesy dates that he plans and goes, this is amazing. And she writes him notes. You're the strongest, most masculine man I've ever met. You know, things like that. She pursues him. Pursuing each other means that we go out of our way to show the other one love. What's important here is that there's not a requirement that one person start it or that the other person reward it. It comes about spontaneously, organically. It's purely to show that you care. And it works beautifully when it happens together, when you're both doing it at the same time. It knits you together. When you lean in and show them that you love them with no expectation for a reward or anything else. I don't pursue Fran because she pursued me. Heaven knows there was a lot of women that pursued me. Come on, you're supposed to just agree with that. I didn't pursue Fran just because she pursued me. I pursued Fran because I loved her. We have to pursue each other. Now, if you're here this morning and you've been down this road and you're nowhere near this stage yet, you need to understand that you can start today, but it's going to take some time. Throughout the book, we are late. Throughout the Song of Solomon, you find that he compares love and relationship to a vineyard or to a garden. And so keep this in mind. When a plant has been damaged in a storm or something or other like that, it takes time to heal. It takes some encouragement and some nurturing to heal. So don't expect this to happen overnight. Lean in and start with small steps, but keep going forward. And in time, the healing will come and the plant will start to thrive again. And secondly, lastly, don't try to do this on your own. You can try to do it on your own. But this morning I'd recommend go to God and ask Him for His help. This morning we are celebrating communion, which demonstrates that Christ is the ultimate restorer of relationships. Because while we were yet sinners, Christ loved us. And He came to earth, offered Himself in our place as a sacrifice for our sin, and died to pay the penalty of that sin. Shed His blood on our behalf, paid a price that we couldn't pay, so that our relationship could be restored with God. And then He rose from the dead, overcoming death. And that same power that was demonstrated there is there and available for you in your relationships together with your loved ones. When you call on Him, when you ask Him to come and help you to knit that back together, He can help you restore that. He can help you rekindle the romance, find that love and feeling again, and move forward together as couples. We celebrate that this morning because that's what He's done for us, and that's what is available for us as well, if we will allow Him, if we will lend ourselves to Him working this way in our lives.